Thank you. Hi, hello everyone. Actually, this is what picks me up, so this is just a prop. It doesn't even matter. I could do that. Get away from me. Thank you all for coming. I don't know why you're here, meaning like, do you work here and you were forced to attend? Somebody shook your head. You don't work here? Great. Okay, that's good. Then that means at least he wasn't forced to come here. You have a Google shirt on. You don't know who I am. You wish you were somewhere else, but you're smiling. That's okay. Thank you. You have the book. Maybe you paid for it. Maybe it was a gift. I don't know. In any case, thank you for coming to see me here now. I appreciate that. And thank you, Jason. You could have dressed up. You kind of dressed like a slob to introduce me. The joke there is that I'm wearing the exact same thing. The Mitt Romney thing. Yeah, I played him for Funny or Die, so what? But then I got invited to the Obama headquarters. That's true, and I'll just talk about that for a second before I read the book. What's funny is I think that it's probably a good idea to make access to healthcare easier in the United States. That's a radical position that I hold, and I've written about that a lot. And I didn't really care about, like, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I just vote, like, on issues. And healthcare I liked a lot, so I wrote a lot of stuff about that. And then the Obama administration contacted me and said, like, would you like to, it seems like you care about healthcare. Would you want to maybe do a little, and I was like, well, let me tell you how I feel, and you can tell me, because I bet I can tell you some things that'll make you not want to have anything to do with me. And I told them, I was like, I want Barack Obama to be reelected as much as Michelle wants him to be reelected, but not because I care about him. I mean, he's some insane millionaire with the mental problems that you need to want to be president. So I didn't ever wear a Hope t-shirt or anything crazy like that. Weird sloganeers. So I was like, but that said, I'm insane. So I'll happily go around the country talking about healthcare policy and all that, why it's important. But I might not even say the name Obama. And they were like, it's been great speaking with you. And but then as it got closer and I started to talk more fervently and began to just like brutalize Mitt Romney, I studied Karl Rove and his scummery, and it seemed like a great way. So I just went after him, just because it was funny to me. I remember he personally like outlawed forever assault weapons in Massachusetts, which is where I grew up. So I'd followed him for a lot longer than a lot of people had. And then 3 years later, in 2007, he joined the NRA. So just watching him, I was like, yeah. And the healthcare thing, anyway. Even Google now is like, why did we invite him to talk it? So I just was nuts about the Affordable Care Act, and it's awesome website, right, Google? And it's okay to admit that was garbage and embarrassing, but. So then finally they did invite me, though, because I did work so hard to help Obama get reelected, and I did go to I was there election night, and it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. My wife was pregnant with our second kid, and she's a woman, so she has a uterus and a vagina, and so I don't think women. There are people who like, well, women should pay $1 million to get a pap smear, and men should get free blow-up penthouse, blah, blah. Anyway, drives me crazy. So anyway, that was just a way to kill some time, because I'm secretly afraid to speak in public and read from my own book. No, so I'll tell you why the hell did I write a book? I wrote, a lot of people know me from Twitter, which is great, and I had been doing stand-up for a long time before that. And then in 2010, Julie Grau from Spiegel and Grau, who published this book, wrote me on Twitter, and she just like @replied me, like the way you would say, like, hey, want to grab a club sandwich, Rick, like to your friend? And she said, hey, would you write a book for me? And I wrote like, okay, and then forgot about it. And because I didn't know who she was. I'm sorry, I didn't know who she was. And then Matt Johnson, an amazing real author and guy that I know, wrote me and he said, hey, asshole, you need to pay attention to that. She's like legitimately a towering figure in the publishing world. And you're an asshole again. He said it twice. And so I wrote her back and I was like, yeah, remember when I was like, yeah, that was just joking. I mean, I want to, but I didn't mean to so cavalierly. What do I do? How? And so we started talking, and I said to her, I was like, well, you know, I live in Los Angeles, and I said to her, I was like, it so happens I've got a show next month in New York, just trying to be so casual, and maybe you could come. And then she was like, okay. And so then I immediately like called every theater in New York. I was like, I have to do a show next month in New York, because I didn't really have one. And I like found one. And then I was like, yeah, oh, remember, I forgot the information, because I just, you know, I have so many shows I forgot. And here it is, you know, and I told her where it was. And I'm gonna try to just gradually move this throughout the thing. And so we started talking, and she came to my show with her team, and they read all the stuff that I'd written for Vice and saw my stand-up, which is very... if you did find me first on Twitter, you'd be forgiven if you thought that my stand-up was like Stephen Wrighty or Mitch Hedbergy, like short jokes. But it totally isn't. It's like super long, autobiographical, meandering, just shit. Really awful. And which is to say, it's longer stuff. So this wasn't a crazy departure for me, even though some people would be forgiven for thinking that it is. So I started to write the book, and I wanted it to be I love memoirs and I love autobiographies, but my favorite ones aren't ones where it was like, well, my parents met at blah, blah, and then I was born at X hospital. I don't know, who cares? We all have our own version of that, and I'm not interested in yours, so why would I be in mine? And so I wanted it to be true, first of all, err towards the side of humor, and then deal with some of the things, because yes, I'm very, very lucky to be able to make a living doing comedy, but I've been through some darker stuff, like anybody who survives to adulthood has. And but some of my stuff was just a little more dramatic. I mean, sort of, you know, the thing that sort of divides my life into two halves was 11 years ago, in a blackout, I drove a car into the Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles, and I broke both my arms very badly. This bone was sticking out. It was a compound fracture. I had to have surgery on both of them. So I was in jail in a wheelchair, in a bloody hospital gown from face blood, and my legs were also in these leg stabilizer things because my knees had been ripped open to the bone. So my legs couldn't bend and my arms didn't work, and I was in a hospital gown. So sometimes in jail I would just slide out of the wheelchair and my hospital gown would come up, exposing all my everything to everybody in jail. And if you've been in jail, you know that you're not supposed to... You're supposed to keep that stuff to yourself. And so that's when I was like, oh, I should live my life in a different manner from now on, or I'll definitely die, or kill people. For me, it was kind of like, I didn't care, like a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics. Like, I was like, I could have died at any moment, and I was totally at peace with that. But once the cops were like, you know, it's pretty amazing you didn't kill 30 people tonight, and I was like, yeah, you're correct. And so once that was driven home for me, that's when I decided to put the plug in the proverbial jug. And so that sort of divides my life in half. And it was only after that, it was some months after that, when I got like my first cast off, or my last cast off, and was like halfway through all the occupational therapy I needed, that I first did my first open mic and did stand-up and stuff. So that sort of very neatly divides my life into two halves. And then after that, I met a woman, and we got married, and we have 2 kids and all this stuff, and began to make my living in comedy. So that's all dealt with in here. But now I'm going to read a little of it for you. And if you fucking interrupt me... No, I'm just kidding. They didn't even tell me if I shouldn't swear or not, but I did. So this section is called La Mer, which is French for the sea. All the chapter titles are in French, because I thought that would be a funny, pretentious asshole thing to do, and I did. So here we go. Lamia. For 2 summers during college, 1997 and 1998, I quit New York for Marblehead and drove a boat called a launch on Marblehead Harbor. A launch is a glorified water taxi that takes rich people out to the middle of the harbor where their boats are moored. Marblehead, a town of 20,000 souls, has 5 yacht clubs. I'd be very surprised if there were another town on our planet that had a higher number of yacht clubs per capita. The Eastern, Boston, Dolphin, and Marblehead yacht clubs had their own launch services. The Crescent Yacht Club employed me, and I drove its members exclusively from the dock to their various opulent sailboats and powerboats. Our busiest day and night of the summer was always the 4th of July. A wealthy community, Marblehead could afford to mount a high-quality fireworks display. Also, since Marblehead is a peninsula with a large island that's attached by a thin causeway, its natural harbor is both protected from the open sea and surrounded by land on 3 sides. So the harbor is several square miles of water filled with around 2,000 boats, ringed by beaches and docks and parks. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better place to drink 14 beers and watch fireworks. Though my earliest 4th of Julys found me sitting on my dad's shoulders and watching fireworks from the beach, after puberty I saw the holiday as one of the few days of the year when it was perfectly acceptable to drink into unconsciousness. The launch would operate non-stop on the 4th, ferrying people to and from their boats. Then, after the fireworks, my fellow launch operators and I would respond to radio calls and pick up families with kids, old couples, and dangerously crowded motorboats filled with drunk people in their 20s. Our staff consisted of our boss, Dockmaster Bill, my high school friend and bandmate, Michael. Our band was called Scaramanga, and it was named after Francisco Scaramanga from The Man with the Golden Gun, the James Bond movie. In that movie, Francisco Scaramanga, they've never seen a picture of him, but they know that he has the identifying feature of having a 3rd nipple. So Sean Connery as James Bond has to pose as him at one point, and the way that he does, he just puts on a prosthetic 3rd nipple, and occasionally be like, yeah, I'm him. And they're like, oh, okay, come on in and play Baccarat with us. Bill was a salty dog in his 40s who'd grown up on the water and worked at the Crescent for at least 10 years. Michael and I had known each other since we were about 7, and then became very close in high school when we both were heavily involved in theater as well as drinking and talking about boobs. Our workday finished up at 11 p.m., and then we were free to get into whatever trouble we felt like getting into. For Michael and me, in the summer of 1998, that meant getting drunk, appropriating a little dinghy that belonged to the yacht club, and using it to cruise around the harbor to see who was out and about. It wasn't rare for us to take the 12-foot motorboat out for a drunken cruise in the middle of the night. We'd do this a few times every summer with no real fear of getting in trouble, since drunken shenanigans on the high seas of Massachusetts are as run-of-the-mill as mustaches on cops. Being filled with beer and on the water is something people have been doing since they figured out how to ferment hops, and it's easy to understand why. It's fun and it feels good. You've thinned your blood with the alcohol that's sloshing around in your belly, complementing the rise and fall of the sea you're floating upon. It just feels right to have booze in your guts as you float around Mother Ocean like a dumb, fat buoy at the mercy of the sea and filled with spirits. Sailors refer to the ocean as the drink, too, as in, I slipped and grabbed for a halyard and my wrench fell in the drink. So there's clearly something substantial and enduring to this alcohol-sea connection. Sometimes Michael and I would putt out to Children's Island, an island about a mile beyond the mouth of the harbor, and go for a stroll. Growing up, I'd gone to day camp on Children's Island for years, and it felt entirely naughty to trespass on it as a drunken adult. Like most islands around New England, it smelled like seagull shit and wild grass. I'm sure if I caught a whiff of it right now, I'd start crying. When I was a counselor on the island, I'd had to become a certified lifeguard. Part of the training consisted of an overnight springtime visit to the island where we were supposed to practice different rescue techniques. Upon arrival, we discovered that the Marblehead cop who taught the course was insane. He must have been certified 40 years ago over the telephone or something. Clearly no one was checking up on him because he had gone entirely rogue and used educational techniques that were, I now realize, abusive. The most memorable thing he did was show us a slideshow of actual dead drowning victims from Marblehead police files. He began the slideshow by asking, "What's the difference between a saltwater drowning and a freshwater drowning?" I'll tell you, saltwater animals eat people, freshwater animals don't. So when you find someone who's drowned in saltwater, they'll have been eaten somewhat, and when you find someone who's drowned in freshwater, they'll be all bloated up. So what you find is horrible, just in 2 different ways. He then got out a slide projector, positioned it in front of a white sheet that was suspended in front of a fireplace, and started showing us pictures of a variety of corpses that had been pulled out of the water a few miles in various directions from where we sat in our sleeping bags in a lodge on a small island in the middle of the dark, terrifying night. My friend Ellen was there. We were adhered to each other in fear as he clicked from corpse to corpse. The island didn't have electricity, so the slide projector was powered by a portable gas generator that hummed outside the building, efficiently masking the sounds of any approaching ghosts or child murderers. One particularly ghastly saltwater drowning victim was a skeleton whose meat had been almost entirely removed from it. Almost. The gut contents within the rib cage had proven difficult to access for the fish and bottom feeders, so the ribs rather effectively caged a rotten buffet of guts that poked out the bottom and protruded between the ribs. The slide that followed that was of a dead baby. A fucking dead baby. And since this baby had drowned in fresh water, it was bloated and huge. Next photo was a close-up of the dead baby's bloated face. We cringed, and then the screen immediately went black and the generator went out. Then it came back on, then off again. The generator sputtered. The dead baby's face strobed on and off as the generator outside choked and a room full of 16-year-olds screamed. What in Christ's fuck did this have to do with lifeguarding? 20 years later, my best guess remains not a thing. Officer Soul Murder went out to check on the generator, and when he returned, he said, "Bad news, the generator broke." We shuddered in relief and then went outside to practice moving people with spine injuries from one end of the island to another. Okay. I'm gonna leave it there. And here's another one, another semi-nautically themed one. Man, even reading that fucking happened. What an asshole. This one's called Lucca Hodge. One night in the summer of 1999, I jumped off the Manhattan Bridge. It wasn't a suicide attempt. I had a bungee cord attached to my ankles. But it was still illegal and not part of any tour package or team building exercise. I'd just graduated from NYU and was working as a waiter at the Atlantic Grill on the Upper East Side. Right before I graduated, I booked the role of Sir Lancelot in a touring company of Camelot. But the tour didn't begin rehearsals until fall, so I spent the summer waiting tables. The night in question, I ate probably 25 pieces of exotic sushi that patrons had left untouched on their plates. Rich people ate at the restaurant and thought nothing of ordering $200 worth of sushi and eating half of it. What was I supposed to do? Not eat it? At around 11, I split up my tips with the busboys, then headed out and took the 6 train back to Alphabet City, planning to drink a 12-pack of Lowenbrow without assistance. When I got back to my apartment, my roommate Kiosh was pacing around and smiling. "Guess what I'm gonna do tonight?" he asked. "What?" "I'm gonna bungee jump off the Manhattan Bridge." I'd met Kiosh during my junior year in Paris. I'd been drawn to him immediately because he was a smart, fun, well-read guy who was always up for adventure. He was named for an island in the Persian Gulf off of Iran, which is where his father Manouchehr was born. Manouchehr had an archetypal entrance to the United States in 1963 when the boat that took him across the Atlantic encountered fog as it approached land. After a period of very low visibility, the Statue of Liberty herself emerged from the fog, looming over the boat, welcoming them to the United States. Rather than ask Kiosh any questions like, "Why are you jumping off the Manhattan Bridge?" I told him I was coming with him, and we headed out the door to meet some guy who has a bungee cord near the Brooklyn on-ramp to the Manhattan Bridge. Kiosh didn't know the cord owner, but he did know a Polish guy who knew him, so we went to meet his friend Dariusz at a bar. I didn't know Dariusz, but he endeared himself to me by immediately launching into a story about how he'd learned the hard way earlier that day that wearing a tiny Speedo bathing suit to the beach draws a lot of attention in the US. He presented Kiosh and me with a cogent argument as to why Speedo suits are superior and why American men were silly for not wearing them. We told him that he made a great case, but that American women tended to prefer a little mystery where a man's junk dimensions were concerned, even though solving such a mystery might involve facing down a disappointing penis lurking in the shadow of a fat gut after drinking a bucket of wine coolers at a rented beach house. Dariush was pretty fit, though, so I'm sure his ensemble made some people happy. After bonding with Dariush, we headed out to meet the guy who'd show us how to jump off a bridge. About 15 people were gathered on a busy corner of Flatbush Avenue waiting for the guy with the rope. For something wholly illegal and intrinsically dangerous, it was a rather well-advertised operation. After a few minutes, Tony arrived and led us along Flatbush Avenue toward the on-ramp to the bridge. As we traveled, Tony gave us instructions, including the order to lie down if the subway passed us on the bridge so that conductors wouldn't see us. Tony had me carry the bungee cord up the bridge in a big bag. It weighed maybe 50 pounds, and I told myself its substantial weight meant that it must be really safe. When we'd covered some distance, he handed out walkie-talkies set to the police frequency to a few of the customers. He'd asked us to give him $20 apiece. He told us to listen for any discussion among the cops about a large group of people sneaking out onto the Manhattan Bridge with crazy gear. He said that it'd be hard to get away if they wanted to arrest us, so what we were really listening to was for any mention of Truck 2 or Truck 6. He said that those names referred to tactical anti-terrorist units that would kill us first and then figure out who we were. He said if we heard that those groups were being sent to the bridge, we should just drop everything, run, and not stop until we were in New Jersey. I listened very carefully for Trucks 2 and 6 for the next few hours. We walked out over the East River, hitting the deck whenever a train came by, and made it about 1/8 of a mile from the Brooklyn shore, and then set up our station. Our first instructions from Tony were to climb down a level on the bridge and, I swear to God, disable the red lights that hang from the bridge to alert airplanes, "Hello, I am a bridge." I'm sure that today, after 9/11, New York law enforcement would Truck 6 your ass off for that stunt. But our adventure took place 2 years prior to the attack, so we didn't imagine anyone would be too upset that we were turning a piece of vital metropolitan infrastructure into an amusement park ride and making it partially invisible to air traffic. Then Tony, who claimed to be a theatrical rigger, took out the bungee cord and secured it to something. To what? To a piece of bridge, I guess. I have no idea. Then Tony asked who wanted to go first, and a short guy with a buzz cut volunteered. Before he let the test subject jump, Tony thrust a tape recorder in the guy's face. "What is your name?" "Dave." "What are you about to do?" "Jump off the Manhattan Bridge." "Are you doing this of your own volition?" "Yes." "Jump." The guy jumped, screaming. It was loud for a fraction of a second, then immediately much quieter, as though someone had very quickly turned a volume knob down. The reason his screaming got quieter, to us, is that he had just jumped off a bridge. I looked over the edge and he had disappeared into the black. Disabling the bridge's lights had effectively shrouded us in inky darkness. I very sincerely believed the rope had broken and he had gone into the river. I was certain I'd helped facilitate the death of someone. Someone stupid, like me. But then Tony yelled, "You all right down there?" And the test subject meowed a weak, "Yes." Then a cop car pulled up at the water's edge in Brooklyn. There was no activity on the scanners, but Tony yell whispered down to Jumper 1, "Just chill out for a second. Don't move." Kiyosh and I looked at each other incredulous. Don't move? What if his head filled with blood and exploded? How long can a person hang upside down without passing out or becoming permanently stupid? What if Truck 6 fired a missile up his defenseless asshole? After a few terrifying minutes, the cop left, not having seen us. We threw another rope with a carabiner down to Danglin' Dave. He hooked it onto his waist, and we manually pulled him back up to the bridge. I calculated that he probably weighed 75% of what I weighed, so there was probably a 3 out of 4 chance I'd survive. He said, "Whoa," a bunch in a manner that suggested he was properly awed, but not necessarily retarded after the rush of blood to his head. Good enough for me. Then it was my turn. Though I counted maybe 11 reasons as to why I shouldn't jump, several of them potentially fatal or crippling, and all of them criminal, I was determined to have a stranger tie a rope around my ankles and leap off that bridge at 3 in the morning as planned. Tony stuck his tape recorder in my face. "What is your name?" "Rob Delaney." I must point out that Kiosh made fun of me without interruption for several years at how much naked fear was audible in my shaky, high-pitched voice as I answered Tony's questions. What are you about to do? Jump off the Manhattan Bridge. Are you doing this of your own volition? Yes, jump. I jumped. I looked out over a sleepy, twinkling Manhattan as I plummeted into the night. It was wonderful and visceral, like my mind and body were violently wiped clean and rebooted to take in the majesty of the experience. It felt like a reverse birth as I flew into and through the darkness toward the river. Then the slack in the cord tightened as my rocketing mass stretched it to its limit and I shot skyward, and bridgeward, almost as fast as I'd descended. I made it almost to the bridge, then fell again and began a series of bounces. It was like being in a giant glitter globe as the city's lights shook around me. I felt entirely buoyed and supported and loved by the dirty river, the ugly bridge, the beautiful city, and the questionable rope. Then Tony threw down the yank 'em up rope, and after it swung past me a few times, I was able to grab it, hook it to my waist, and get pulled back up to the bridge by my fellow jumpers. Then Kiosh and the others jumped, one by one, and we pulled them back up. We packed up as the sun rose and took the train home to Alphabet City to sleep, arriving in full daylight. It had been entirely magnificent to watch about 20 people in a row have an experience you knew they'd talk about for the rest of their lives and participate in it as well. It was interesting to see the few people who backed out so totally at peace with their decision, too. Nobody gave them a hard time either. I know I thought, of course you didn't want to jump off a bridge. Why would anyone do that? That would be crazy. Those of us who had jumped were pretty much aglow. As my reflections began to gather and coalesce in my brain, I was absolutely glad I had done it, but I knew I would never do it again. Nor would I allow a loved one, or really anyone, to do it, since I'd seen how ramshackle an operation it was. It was a singular rush and an extraordinarily terrible idea, all at once. And while I have difficulty imagining a scenario where I'd do something that reckless again, I'm very happy I can say I jumped off the Manhattan Bridge, and you, statistically, cannot. So if you have questions or anything, now would be the time for that. Thank you very much. That's the first I've ever read that out loud to people, so thanks for listening. You do the Q's, and I do the A's.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
You're probably the most prominent example of a comedian, especially now, who has made their name almost exclusively through the web. Mm-hmm. Do you think that model is kind of here to stay, or do you think that there will always be a place for comedians to kind of just go on the road and work the clubs and do the way it's been done for years? I'm going to repeat that question. So I know you guys all heard it, but they told me to, so I'm going to. Do I think that the web is here to stay? You know, can you still achieve notoriety / fame / a career through touring and the old-fashioned methods of getting your name out there? I sort of think that it is here to stay, of course, you know, or it'll morph into whatever the next thing is, but a variation on what we see now will endure, assuming there isn't a singularity T2 situation where electricity stops existing or there's a nuclear winter. Which is also, we have to be prepared for that. But it would be, in my opinion, it would be silly to not avail yourself of the tools that are here now, just because, for example, to give you a timeline and explain it explicitly, I did stand up for the first time in 2002. Then in 2007, I lost another day job and thought, okay, now I'm going to be a comedian full time in 2007. In 2009, I joined Twitter. And then in 2010, was the last time I collected a paycheck for anything other than comedy. So it's been about 3.5 years that I've made my living through comedy. I pursued a career through all the traditional channels, but then the internet helped me certainly catapult, you know, a few strata. And so I think that it's almost like once public transportation came into play, it's like, would you take the subway to get to gigs in 1956 or whatever? Yeah, why would, because if you don't, then Dave will, and you'll get to the club on your horse and buggy, you know what I mean? Like way after his people are clapping and women are just throwing their clothing and people are bringing buffets of hot assorted meat, you know what I mean? Like, so it's here, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just what's happening, you know what I mean? Like, my head might explode from a sniper's bullet, but the internet, I don't think, has improved lives. You can just do more faster, but you're still doing more, so that sucks, but you can do it faster, and that's cool. So I think it's sort of like a net zero thing. So
I guess maybe a spin-off question is, as someone who has sort of made their name on the web,
yes,
do you run into resistance from established industry types who kind of resent the fact that you didn't go through the traditional route?
Only from small-minded people who aren't good at what they do and aren't and that's not even a joke, and aren't good in that traditional realm, Somebody who's sincerely funny, why would they care? You know what I mean? So no, and you've got also, it's so hard to make it as a comedian that, like, Twitter gets me in the door, but of a club, people don't care. Like, I would be bodily thrown out of a club if I didn't deliver once I got in there. So thank God I had been, sharpening my sword before Twitter ever came on the scene. So not really, and nor do I care that there are people who find out about me from Twitter first. Great, I mean, as recently as 3.5 years ago, I worked telemarketing in a dirty basement boiler room near the airport selling a garbage financial newspaper, and would call people and be like, do you want this terrible newspaper? And they'd be like, no, why are you bothering me? And I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Making less than minimum wage. So I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I wish that it was 15 years in the Comedy Cellar that got me to where I am now. I can perform at the Comedy Cellar now. And if it didn't work out when I was there, then they would say, get out of here and don't come back, So it's sort of like, it's here, so use it, and that's my answer to that.
Thank you very much.
I hope it answered it.
Hey, Rob. You sound like you had some interesting jobs before you became a full-time comedian. Can you talk about those and how they influenced your comedy today?
Yeah, other jobs that I've had that have influenced my comedy. I mean, I worked in a factory for a couple years where we made snow plows for Chicago subway trains, and we made this is terrible, we made conveyor belts for tobacco companies that they could like sort their tobacco on and kill our grandparents with. And but working in a factory is very applicable, because the thing about, like, the best comedians, like a Jerry Seinfeld or a Louis C.K. or a Chris Rock or a Sarah Silverman or a Maria Bamford or a Joan Rivers, one thing that unites all of them that might not be the first thing that a layman would think of is work ethic. Those people work. And that's so sexy to me. They go to the factory every day and they do the deal, and they always get better. Like Sarah Silverman, I see her do a lot of shows in LA. She's been famous for a long time. Still getting better, you know what I mean? Still improving. Watching her hone jokes is so inspiring and cool. Or a Louis C.K., an amazing touring schedule while making his own TV show that he writes, produces, directs, edits, and stars in. So factory work, like, it's an honorable thing to punch in every day, do your work and whatever. It might not be glamorous, but so what? You can definitely apply that elbow grease to your glamorous career as a whatever in entertainment, and then your career will endure, So yeah, there isn't a career that I've had that doesn't translate into, and I worked at a company called Intermix Media in 2004. Was it 2003 or 2004? And this company bought a company called ResponseBase in California. ResponseBase invented MySpace, okay? And so I was one of the first people to work at MySpace. I sold the first ads on MySpace, and I wrote like email subject lines and stuff like that. I would test subject lines against each other, and that only hit me like a few months ago. I was like, maybe that's why I can write a tweet, because I scientifically tested horrible spam email things and used math to determine how to burrow into people's brains like a horrible criminal. You know what I mean? So they all, so if what you're doing right now is what you want to do, that's awesome. If it isn't, the thing that you do want to do, you'll be able to use what you're doing right now. So it's all interdisciplinary. It all informs each other. That's my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Like a question from a woman? Oh, thank you.
Like I'm being interrogated. Hi.
I'm being interrogated.
So I'm curious about how you feel about all these things from your life that you've now written about and kind of enshrined in this book. I mean, it just came out, and maybe you're not used to reading from it or talking about it as much, but perhaps you've used it in your stand-up as well. Like, how do you feel about these pieces of your life that are now becoming kind of something else?
Yeah, how do I feel about, personal things that I've experienced, aspects of my life becoming more public and in fact being frozen in
right,
as they are?
And do they kind of still exist in some real way in your brain, and what is your relationship to them now that they're on the page or they're on the stage or wherever they are?
It is, I do like seeing something that I can't monkey with anymore. You know what I mean? This is this book. These stories are these stories. I can't really revise them anymore, and that's kind of cool, because with stand-up, you're always doing that, and I enjoy that too, but it's nice to have to put something down. I read something Joyce Carol Oates tweeted the other day about how it was cool to have finality with like a typewriter, and ink and paper. Like when something was done, it was done, And that's really cool, and that's a form of like confinement, stricture, finishing. Like I like the 140 characters of a tweet. Like Picasso had his blue period. So it is cool. I heard a kindergarten teacher saying, it's like apocryphal, you've probably heard it, where they were like, oh, your kids make the best drawings. How do you do it? And the teacher's like, I just know when to take it away from the kids so they don't make it a crowded piece of kid garbage. And so, so I do like things like restrictions and things being like, nope, that's done, take it away. So just from like a artistic perspective, I like that. But then as far as people seeing stuff about me, I sort of have had practice with that, with like magazine articles that I've written, doing stand-up. So having done stuff in the public eye, so I'm not like, I'm proprietary about it. That happened to me. That's my story. It's not anybody else's unless they're in it. And I don't know. It made me happy just reading these just now, and this is my first reading since the book just came out yesterday. So I just tried to approach it all sort of compassionately and be nice but thorough with my history, so I don't feel revealed or anything. Also, since a lot of the stuff is of a sensitive nature, writing the book wasn't really therapeutic for me because I had waited so long to write about things like alcoholism, sobriety, depression, when I had really gone through formal therapy and healed to some degree with the deadlier things. So now I don't read this and think like, whereas had I written it, I think, irresponsibly, which is to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, then maybe it might have been a little scarier to put it out there. But I'm sort of at peace with everything, and this book was written from a place of I feel mental health, or the best version of mental health that I can approximate. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I did talk for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, on Pete Holmes' You Made It Weird podcast, you talked about like this black hole of death while you were singing the national anthem the first time, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just curious, like, does that keep coming up every time? Because you've done it multiple times, from what I understand.
Yes. Yeah, and the answer to that is no. I have sung the national anthem at 5 or so Red Sox games at Fenway Park and 5 or so games. And what he's talking about, I sang the national anthem for the first time at Fenway Park in 2004, the year the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in 86 years. And, do I take credit for that? A little bit. But so... and the way that happened is I studied musical theater in college at NYU, and I had a friend who worked for the Red Sox, and she said, hey, there's 180 games a year. We can't always get someone good. Could you do it one time? And so I was like, yes. And so I did it. And the public address system at Fenway Park is 700 years old. And so when you sing, you hear an echo of yourself because you're in a very large place, but there's a delay. So you say like, oh, say, and then like a second and a half later, you hear back to you thundering much louder than it came out of your body, oh, say. But that's when you're already a little bit ahead into the next thing. So you're doing a duet with yourself from the past, out of rhythm, in this like syncopated singing what is known to be the hardest song there is. Like the national anthem, cool song, spans octaves. The reason people screw it up and they pass around YouTube videos of it is because it's a hard song to sing. It's not because they're bad or an idiot. The words don't make sense. It's just like a list of stuff. Literally, like it's not a ballad where it's like, and then a thing naturally happened that makes sense from it's just literally, it's like The Joker by Steve Miller, might as well be our national anthem. So you're singing the hardest song in the world in the most hallowed baseball park in America. It's a town that I grew up in, fully sold out, with an echo from, it's like imagine if somebody was like, I dare you to do good at this hard thing while you're doing it. And so I was so nervous that literally my vision went like, and I was like, could see this. And I literally disconnected. I totally had like a Sufi mystical experience where I was like, literally this is what I thought. I was like, the anthem needs to be sung. I am the vessel through which it must come to earth. So I was like, get your ego. I'm not singing the anthem. The anthem must be sung. All these people need to hear it. So my fears mean nothing. I literally was like, be a diaphanous fabric that God can dance about, literally was like, and so I sang it, don't remember it at all. And then when they cut, okay, so I go like, and the home of the brave, and I went, brave, but that happens so often that people screw up, that people deflate and like, that they know to cut the sound. So I was like, oh my God, everybody heard that. And they were like, nobody heard it except the sound engineer who was like, yep, here's the, okay, turn it off. So yes, I've never, but now I can't get nervous. I could perform on and I could be being shot at, and in front of a million people, I'd be like, it's not a big deal. So that was good. That was good for my comedy that I did that.
Thanks.
Thanks. Well, I guess. Hello, hi.
Does this work? Yeah. Thank you for coming in. You're a great reader.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
He said I'm a great reader, if you didn't hear that.
I'm wondering if you've seen kind of the evolution of Twitter and all the other technology that's coming out. Have there been shortcomings in those platforms that you've kind of seen that haven't let you emphasize your comedy enough? You're using YouTube, but then Vine came out, other things like that you wish, is an easier platform to use to get your comedy out there?
That's an excellent question. Have I seen shortcomings in other emerging technologies that I wish I could use better or could just be used better, could be implemented. I think they're trying to do it, and this is kind of nerdy, but I might be in the right place to talk about that. From just like an e-commerce perspective, it might be cool for people like me and other people to be able, if you could like buy stuff within Twitter, if there was like a shopping cart, in there, that would kind of be cool, because then you could be like, oh, I don't have to go 3 websites away. Now that everybody knows everything to the point of insanity about us, and it's plenty easy to share information across different things, it would kind of be cool if you could be like, now I own that thing he was talking about and can consume it on my larger screen at home tonight, with my family. So of course that'll definitely be happening, but that's one thing that would be cool. Vine didn't really call to me. The thing I like about Twitter is that within the best tweets are the ones that don't have links in them, and the ones where because you have to use your imagination. Like, I've found that when I would ever meet people in real life that I knew on like Friendster or then MySpace or then Facebook, the people that I've met from social networks before and enjoyed the most being around are usually people from Twitter, because I think you have to distill your like purest essence of who you are into the 140 characters. So it's just sort of weird how somebody on Facebook can have like 800 pictures and blah and be like, this is the self I wish to present, and it's like not as clear as somebody who you get a sense of from really reading the thing that they had to squeeze and distill and diamond compress into their little tweet box. So other technologies, and also I've totally put my eggs in the Twitter basket. So people would say to me when Vine came out, like, why don't you have a Vine? I'd be like, because there's 24 hours in a day. That's why I don't have a Vine, and I would like to pay attention to my family for a couple of them. And so shortcomings, Twitter's pretty cool. Every new thing they add, I typically don't really need it, because I sort of use it in like the purest way, like not linking, not whatever. But I've been pretty satisfied with it. There's certain things like sometimes I wish there was an built-in or natural way for me to like figure out I would love to have like a super Minority Report dashboard for the people who follow me, so that I could be like, so maybe because why do people in Albuquerque need to know that I'm going to be playing in Cincinnati that night? You know what I mean? So geo-targeting crap like that would be fun. But it does what I need it to do. Would I refine that a little bit? Yes. But no other website things tickle my fancy too much. I don't feel that there's anything that I can identify like, oh, I wish this existed and doesn't. Like, I'm not going to invent anything anytime soon, because I'm secretly very old-fashioned and boring and a Luddite and don't know how to even do what I do. Thank you. When I started working at the company that invented MySpace, not even 18 months before that, when I started working there as a temp, I had to ask somebody how to turn my computer on for me. And they were like, and you can just drag and drop that into, I remember after they showed me turn it on, I was like, what, drag? What? I remember trying to not cry. I was so nervous about how to basic use of a computer. Yeah. So I think that might have brought us full circle, that one right there. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everybody. You're very kind to come and listen. I appreciate it. Thank you.